In the darkness of Patmos, the Apostle John stands alone. He has been exiled to this small island because of his testimony about Jesus Christ. And on this day, something happens that changes everything he will ever write. John sees a vision, not a dream. Not imagination, a vision of Jesus Christ, the Lamb, standing before the throne of God with a sealed scroll in his hand. This scroll represents what will take place in the final unfolding of human history. And one by one, the seals begin to open. The first seal is opened, and John sees a white horse, symbolizing conquest and movement across the earth. Then comes the second seal. John does not slow down to explain emotionally. He simply records what he sees. He writes, "Another horse, fiery red, went out, and it was granted to the one who sat on it to take peace from the earth, and that people should kill one another. And there was given to him a great sword. A red horse appears, a rider is seated upon it, and authority is given to him." Before we try to explain what it means or what it represents, we need to slow down and look at what John is actually describing in the moment it happens. First, what exactly does John see when the second seal is opened? He sees a second horse, described as fiery red. The Greek word here is pyros. This is not the most common word for the color red. John could have used a more general term, but he chose pyros, which carries the idea of fire, burning embers, or the deep red of fresh blood. To a first-century audience, this word would have been striking. It immediately brought to mind scenes of violence, sacrifice, and destruction. It was the kind of color you associated with battlefields and sudden loss of life. On this horse sits a rider. Unlike the first rider who carried a bow, this one is given a great sword, a machaira. This was not a long ceremonial sword or a weapon used mainly for show. It was a shorter, heavy blade designed for close quarters fighting, the kind soldiers used when the battle got personal and messy. This detail already tells us something about the kind of conflict we're dealing with. It is not distant conquest or political maneuvering. It is the kind of fighting that happens when people are brought face to face with each other in anger or desperation. Right away, we notice something important in how John describes the scene. He does not say the rider simply takes peace. He says it was granted to him. The sword is given to him. This idea of authority being given is repeated for a reason. This brings us to why the red horse matters so much. The color is not decoration. In the Bible, red often connects directly to bloodshed and judgment. Centuries earlier, the prophet Zechariah saw red horses as part of God's activity on the earth. The image was already linked to conflict and divine action. John's first readers, many of whom knew the Hebrew scriptures, would have recognized this connection immediately. The choice of pyros is deliberate. It paints a picture that is more intense than ordinary red. It suggests something active and consuming, like fire spreading or blood being spilled on a large scale. If you're enjoying this journey through Scripture, consider subscribing to the Red Angel Ministry. Together, we'll continue uncovering the stories, mysteries, and wonders found within the Bible. Now, the third stage, the rider himself. He is never named. We are not told if he is an angel, a spirit, or a symbolic force. What we are told is what he does. He takes peace from the earth so that people kill one another. His job is to remove the restraint that keeps human conflict from spiraling out of control. This leads us to one of the most important phrases in the passage. It was granted to him. This is a major theological point. John repeats the language of permission and authority being given. The rider does not act on his own. He operates within limits that have been set for him. This tells us that even this dark moment is not outside of God's control. The vision is showing us both the reality of judgment and the reality that God still sets the boundaries. This brings us to the heart of the vision. What does it mean that peace is taken from the earth? In the Bible, the word peace often translates the Hebrew idea of shalom. This is much bigger than simply the absence of war. Shalom means wholeness, order, stability, and right relationships between people, within families, and across societies. When shalom is removed, everything that depends on it begins to break down. Trust between neighbors disappears, families divide, communities turn inward, nations become unstable. The sword that was once held back is now free to do its work. This is not just large-scale international war. It is the kind of conflict that reaches into everyday life. People killing one another, as John puts it. It affects every level of society. We see this pattern described elsewhere in Scripture. In the book of Ezekiel, God speaks of removing peace from the land as part of judgment. In Zechariah, the colored horses, including the red ones, move across the earth as agents carrying out God's purposes. And in Matthew 24, Jesus warns his disciples that before the end there will be wars and rumors of wars, nation rising against nation. The Red Horseman fits directly into that progression. As the other seals continue to open, we see how this rider's work connects to the black horse of famine and the pale horse of death. One leads into the next. Now the final stage. What does this vision actually reveal about the world and about how Scripture presents judgment and authority? The Red Horseman shows us the seriousness of what happens when the normal restraints are removed. But the most important person in this scene is not the rider. It is the Lamb. The Red Horseman never breaks his own seal. He does not ride forward until the Lamb chooses to open it. The same Jesus who was slain for the sins of the world is the one holding final authority over these events. The rider moves only because Christ allows it. This does not remove the seriousness of what the Red Horseman brings, but it does change how we see the bigger picture. The vision is not meant to leave us in fear. It is meant to point us back to the one who is still in control. The Red Horseman shows us what happens when peace is removed. The Lamb shows us that even then, history is not out of God's hands. Thank you for watching. Until next time, keep exploring the wonders of Scripture.